everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the swatching and comparison of Quinacridone Gold. I have 12 versions, not necessarily 12 brands because we have, what, 2 brands that repeat? Yeah, I think it's 2. But Quinacridone Gold is an interesting one because true Quinacridone Gold pigment is P049. However, you can't find watercolors using that pigment anymore. You can, like, through boutique handmade stores, but like the big main retailers, like the ones we swatch in these videos, no. So instead, you're going to see a lot of a combo that's very popular for Quinacridone Gold, which is P048, and that's Quinacridone Burnt Orange, and PY150, which is Nickel Azo Yellow. So you'll see that combo a lot. However, there's actually quite a few in this comparison that don't even use P048 or PY150, and some even throw in some violets. We've got PB19 in there, we've got some PR206. It's going to be interesting. That said, I did separate them by name because we were doing these series by name and not necessarily the pigment. So I had done them by the ones that call themselves Quinacridone Gold. And then near the end, you will see where it says like Quinacridone Gold Hue or Deep Gold, because Roman Schmal, Daniel Smith, and Schminke have different naming conventions. So I didn't want to throw them all up there. So technically we have 9 that are literally named Quinacridone Gold, and then 12 total that have Quinacridone Gold with a variation at the end of the name. But none of them are a true Quinacridone Gold, so keep that in mind. Let's get going. Okay, so it is swatching time. We have our chart. I am going to do a little bit of water in the box down here because I know from the last one you guys mentioned you want to see the granulation, which I totally get because I too appreciate granulation. But I do always want to preface this by saying swatch your paints, in particular, in the way you actually paint. There's no right or wrong way to swatch, but if you don't paint wet on wet, there's not much point in swatching wet on wet because you're not going to see the effects. You should swatch instead doing, wet on dry like I do. But for this purpose, I'm doing it this way. But I always like to tell people, swatch the way you paint, because that's the best way you're going to know the new paints you got, how they're going to look. So we are going to start with A Gallo. And like I said, we'll have it dry, wet, see what we can get. Okay, so A Gallo is using PY150, PR101, and PB19. And they are one of those ones, like I said, that have the random color in there, the PB19 color. It's an interesting one, right? But they do have it labeled as Quinacridone Gold. Okay, so now we're on to Daniel Smith's Quinacridone Gold. They use P048 and the PY150 I had mentioned before, which is the most commonly seen. Just gonna add a little bit more water up there. All right, now we have Holbein Quinacridone Gold, also P048, PY150. Just get a little water on that brush. Okay, then we have M. Graham, who also uses P048 and PY150. Well, I'm a slob when it comes to swatching today, aren't I? And it is kind of interesting to see how some are darker, got more of the burnt orange in them. But we're going to move on to one that deviates from the usual. Okay, now we're on to Michael Harding. So Michael Harding's Quinacridone Gold is PY150 and PR209. which I found kind of interesting. Okay, so this is one you don't see a lot. This is Phoenix, and they use PR206, PV19, and PY150. It's an interesting combo. I don't know if you're familiar with that brand, but it's the first time I was able to snag one that worked for these. Okay, so this is Roman Schmal's Quinacridone Gold, PY150, and PO48. It's interesting, you definitely see more of the PO48 coming out right there, but interesting how that one played out. Okay, we're on to Rosa Gallery. Their Quinacridone Gold is PY151, PY42. Ooh, that one caught really nicely. PR264. It's an interesting combo, right? Sorry for the focus issues. I'm changing it over and over and it doesn't want to play along. Okay, now we're on to Sennelier's Quinacridone Gold. So they use PR101, PY150, and then PR206. It's an interesting combo. Okay, so that was those 9 that are actually called Quinacridone Gold. Now we're on to Daniel Smith's Quinacridone Deep Gold, but it's the same pigments, PO48, PY150. It's just deeper. It definitely is deeper. And I do apologize. Last minute, I was like, I should have put these ones that were the same brand next to each other. Hindsight really is 2020. Okay, so now we're on to Roman Schmal Quinacridone Gold Hue. It's PR102 and PY150. And like I said, anyone that had like a hue or deep or whatever they added, that's where I kind of put them at the end here because it wasn't necessarily just Quinacridone Gold. So it'll be interesting to see how these look. Plus, this does use a different set of pigments, unlike Daniel Smith, where they use the same pigments on their 2 different variations. Okay, so last but not least, we are on to Schmincke. Now theirs is Quinacridone Gold Hue. That's why I put it at the end. So it's PY150 and PR101. Though it looks a lot like the others, so that's a start. But like I said, I was going by name, so I put the ones that had just those little tidbits to the end. Okay, so we're going to do the most important part, and that is dry this, because you can't really assess a color until the swatch is dry. So let's do that. Okay, so here we are with our Quinacridone Gold. I am kind of glad I did split them up just for namesake, literally. That said, you know, I was trying a different paper and I'm not very happy with this paper this go around. It left some streakies here. So, lesson, the most important thing in watercolor is not your expensive brushes, though they are really nice to use. It's not even your expensive paint. It is your paper that makes or breaks your painting experience, and this is an example. That said, we're going with it anyways because we can still get the gist of it, right? Okay, now, I do find it interesting. So here we are. Let's do this first. Daniel Smith, because like I said, they have the same pigments, just deep gold, Quinacridone Gold. It is definitely deeper though, a lot more orangey. Can you see that? It's definitely got that burnt orange in there very heavily. To me, this is deep is the perfect word for it, because otherwise this would be more Quinacridone Gold. The Rosa Quinacridone Gold is also really burnt orange-ish color, like a rusty. But they don't use PO48, which is interesting. But it's still a little bit too dark for me. The Roman Schmal Quinacridone Gold versus Quinacridone Gold Hue. They use different pigments other than the PY150. This one has the traditional Quinacridone Burnt Orange. This uses PR102 for their hue, obviously, because they wanted that one to be lighter. I actually like their Quin Gold, though. It's not bad. The Quinacridone Gold hue from Schminke looks like freakishly alike to Roman Schmal, and they use different pigments. We got, I mean, other than the PY150, it's PR101, which, well, PR101 and 102, never mind, close enough. Now, the ones that I found interesting were the ones that threw in the PB19. So let's look at A Gallo first, right? Again, this is a paper issue, if you see that. The PB19 in here versus the PB19 in this Phoenix brand, you know, it's hard to say, but I almost like the Phoenix better. I've never even used Phoenix. I always try to include like some random brands when I'm doing these comparisons just for fun, because sometimes you never know what is easier to find for some people. Grams is honestly what I picture as a Quinacridone Gold. The Daniel Smith one is pretty close, but it's just not quite gold enough. Like, it's not yellow leaning enough for me. It's whereas Grams has that perfect balance. I also like the Holbein. Now these are all three of these are tubes, but the Holbein is very light when it comes out. So that was kind of interesting. So Michael Harding is also in a tube, but to me, I don't know. The ones that I would say are more Quinacridone Gold to me would definitely have to be like the Gram. I like the Roman Schmal. This was Roman Schmal was both pans, but I feel like those are really nice and have a good Quinacridone Gold color to me, because we all experience color differently. Your idea of Quinacridone Gold might not be the same as mine, because gold, what's gold to you? Is it more yellowish, brassy? You know, do you have like more orangey, cool, warm? We could go on forever. That said, I like the consistency of the Holbein, especially because I like it when it lays down, because when I paint wet on dry, so this is what I would be getting. But I think I would almost lean towards that or the Gram. The Michael Harding, though, is actually not bad. It's got an interesting color profile. It's kind of like in between, right? You know, it's not quite here, but it's not quite here. Roman Schmal honestly reminds me of honey. That's what it is. It's reminding me of honey. Perhaps that's what it's calling to me. And then A Gallo is quite similar to the Roman Schmal, quite a bit actually with that. And they use different colors. So it's just so interesting. But out of the 12, I don't know. I like the Gram one. I like the consistency of the Holbein though. You know, all four of these and that one. I don't use Quinacridone Gold much. I'm more of a green gold girl. But I always joke that there's never a Quinacridone that I don't like. However, Quinacridone Gold is a very interesting one to do because, like I said, none of these are actual Quinacridone Golds. They are Quinacridone Gold lookalikes, wannabes, because PO49 is not used to make mass production watercolors anymore. Again, you can go find some on Etsy. I found a few sellers that do handmade PO49 if you want true Quinacridone Gold. But this is a fun one to do because this is literally the name. Like, we've done all these swatching comparisons and I've always said, hey, you know, the name only means so much. You need to know your pigments and like look at the pigments and the variations. And like with sap green and indigo, it was fun. But this one's even more fun because like with Quinacridone Magenta, we had brands that literally used Quinacridone Magenta pigment and they named it that, or they would name it like fuchsia and whatnot. All of these are imposters. They're wannabes. They are made of the mix, and like I said, traditionally PO48 and PY150 are the traditional way to make a Quinacridone Gold now that we don't have PO49, and that's like our workaround. But even the ones that like went off the grid and used different colors still came up with some pretty cool colors. So I'd love to know what you think. What Quinacridone Gold do you use? This was like one of the ones that I did 3 separate polls and it was voted top for all 3. So I'm kind of curious what the fascination is, why so many people wanted Quinacridone Gold compared. If I'm missing the trend, I don't know. Or if it's just me and I'm not a gold gal. I really am not. But I'm just curious because it was top ranked on 3 polls that I did. So I finally came around and did it. And there's not a ton of Quinacridone Golds out there. These were what I could find and get my hands on. And then, of course, we have the whole imposter syndrome. But I'd love to know what you use in your palette now, what one you like. Say you use the M. Graham, but are you now going to convert to Daniel Smith? These also will be available as fat dot cards in my Etsy store for the ones I have in tube form, which is not as many as I normally do. In fact, there's only these ones, but that's better than nothing, right? So thanks for another comparison with me. I am working on redoing Payne's Gray, Lemon Yellow, and Dioxazine Violet. And I would love to know other colors you would like to see. I throw out polls as well. I am working on Ultramarine Blue. That one is going to take some time because I am going to have to split it probably into 2, maybe 3 videos because PB29 unfortunately is not where it would end because some are granulating, we have some that aren't, we have some that are cool, warm. That one's gonna be, there's a reason no one's done the ultimate ultramarine blue comparison, and I can tell you why, because of what you've got to fish through. So I'm slowly collecting a lot of ultramarine blues. And then I'll probably split it into several videos, but I will also do one monster video combining everything for those who want to torture themselves with probably 2 hours of ultramarine blue if you want to get it all in one go. But if you're leaning more towards you want the granulating one, I'll have a video for that and whatnot because yeah, like I said, there's a reason no one's bothered to do the ultimate comparison. I've seen a few like swatch 6 or 7, but we're talking easily over 30 something tubes already, or variations already. So that one's gonna be a beast. So give me some time and let me know other colors in the comments below in the meantime. But I do have Dioxazine Violet I'm currently stocking back up on. Lemon Yellow, Payne's Gray, because I've already done those and I want to redo them now with the full spectrum. And I also am doing Lavender. And what else did I grab? I grabbed something else to start stocking on that because there was a few sales with Jackson's. So I'll leave links in the description below. If you buy anything, they are affiliate links, but it just gives me a small kickback and helps support this channel. But honestly, the best way to help support me is to either buy some dot cards, because then you get something in return. And I'm not stuck with tons of colors that I'm not going to use. Or just, hit the like button and comment and share my videos. Those are all great ways to help support. So thanks for hanging out with me for Quinacridone Gold. And until next time, take care. Bye now.